Yo, man, it is nuts. So,
I mean,
um,
this is going to be a movie.
oh,
OpenAI, Sam Altman being fired and all that.
I went a Netflix special just about the different Sams in the year 2020.
And wow, you've had quite a journey behind you already. You must be exhausted, mate.
Yeah, man. No, and the thing is, like, I ride to the top and I also ride right to the bottom.
Yeah, the roller coaster, yeah. And in terms of how did you get into the near ecosystem then? All right, thank you for tuning into the Teach Me DeFi podcast. We got another episode today, another interview. This time we'll be talking about the near ecosystem. Looking forward to that because I don't have that much in-depth knowledge of it. So we'll be learning about near from Cameron Dennis today, CEO of the Banyan Collective and just active in the near ecosystem, as you will tell us. Hi, Cameron. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Sweet. I always like to hear about people in terms of how they get into crypto and Web3 because it tends to be a bit of a story. So what's that been like for you?
Yeah, so I got sort of like first exposed to Bitcoin in 2013 or so. Kind of just like watched it along with like other macro markets. I was interested in finance and stocks and whatnot, and so Bitcoin was sort of core to that sort of alternative investment route. And so kept my eye on it. And then Ethereum launched, and I'm like, okay, this is starting to get cool. Digital gold is great, but programmable money is much cooler. And so bought Ethereum quite early. This was actually when I was in college. Not
All right.
Didn't have much money at the time, so it was a couple like $100 or so. And then started a blockchain club at my university. So this was at UC Santa Barbara. It's about 2 hours north of LA. And just was focused on teaching people how to program money. And so my logic at the time was, the world isn't inherently broken. There's nothing wrong with like the wind and the rocks and the trees and the, ocean. It's the incentives that power the world that kind of make it worse. And money is the root of this incentive system. And so the idea of programming money kind of opened my eyes, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, pretty naive of how, a lot of these systems work under the hood, but really wanted to teach as many people as possible how to program money to program incentives in hopes to make the world a better place. And so dove into the rabbit hole in Ethereum land, got super interested in distributed systems, applied cryptography, behavioral economics, like all these things really just kind of came together, and started a nonprofit dedicated to supporting blockchain clubs looking to teach about, Ethereum primarily and Bitcoin. And the main issue at the time was the fact that none of these universities could custody crypto. And which means the donors, like at running the blockchain club at UCSB, we'd run a hackathon and someone would donate Bitcoin. The university doesn't accept Bitcoin. And so the university couldn't allocate a tax deduction to the donor. And I'm like, this is messed up.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just take the Bitcoin, turn it to dollar, and then give the tax deduction to the donor? And so, started a nonprofit just dedicated to supporting blockchain clubs, primarily started in California, worked with like all the different blockchain labs at the time. This is like 2017, 2018. Okay. And had to teach about pretty much everything. I've had to teach about Solana and Near and Cosmos and Blockstack and Avalanche and Polkadot and all these other things. And so really got deep into, how these systems work. And I was just fascinated and obviously dove into the market side of things. DeFi summer was fun and crazy, and then COVID hit. And so, I could go on and on and on, but it's pretty much through education. So I really love what you guys are doing here.
Thanks, mate. That means a lot. And wow, you've had quite a journey behind you already. You must be exhausted, mate.
Yeah, man. It is exhausting. Witness the whole FTX collapse, USDC depegging, Silvergate, bear market, the DAO, original DAO hack. Yeah. Like I didn't put any money into it. I didn't have much money at the time. But it's exhausting to say the least.
It's been a blessing. So not having too much money in that sense back then.
Oh yeah, no. And the thing is, like, I ride to the top, and I also ride right to the bottom, and it's just this consistent ride to the top and bottom that I've done. So, there it is.
Yeah, the roller coaster. Yeah. Sweet. And in terms of how did you get into the Near ecosystem then? What sparked your interest and what brought you there?
Yeah, so again, I was teaching about all these different protocols, and the one thing that came to like hit me like a bus every time was key management. We teach these workshops like, oh, by the way, we would start like accredited courses like in the College of Computer Science,
Yeah.
working with the faculty, with the students, with administration. And so we would teach Solidity workshops and we'd need to get people wallets. And like at the workshops, like I'm talking upper division computer science students would lose their keys in the same workshop. And I'm like, this is never going to work unless we have account abstraction built to the protocol.
Yeah.
And I came across Near. EOS at the time also supported this. There's a few other ecosystems that had this. I'm like, this is a prerequisite to mass adoption. Like we need account abstraction in the protocol. And then the next in my eyes prerequisite was Solidity is great. Don't get me wrong, but I want to be able to go to any web developer bootcamp in the world and say, hey, who wants to learn how to program money? And that means it needs to be WebAssembly based.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be, you need to be able to write smart contracts in JavaScript, or at least interact with blockchains in JavaScript in a very easy way. Rust is the default, and it should be the default. It's much more secure, and there's a lot of benefits there. But I would like for the protocol itself to be able to support smart JavaScript smart contract development and just like front-end on-chain development. And so WebAssembly was the sort of second prerequisite in my eyes. And then the third one is you need a scale state. And so for this, like, Ethereum at the time was going with this whole sharded approach. Near had actually like implemented sharding already. And I started seeing like all of the delays and, the Ethereum roadmap and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't love bridging. Bridging scares the hell out of me. I think it should scare the hell out of everybody. I saw that like Near's architecture, such like with the combination between the account model, WebAssembly, and like scaling state through sharding, sort of was the trifecta for me. And the caveat is, and I'm not here just to like shill, by the way, like I will tell you where Near falls short as well.
Right. We'll get to that.
Yeah, I will. I'm happy to unpack that. It's around like validators. Like there's not a huge amount of validators. I think it's like 230 or something right now. But what I liked about the sharding approach is that the protocol needs to get more validators as it gets more demand. So what I like to say is it scales linearly. It decentralizes linearly with demand. And I like that because it gives, the validators to be able to move quickly. If you don't have a ton of, demand for block space, like I don't think the thing needs to be as, like why decentralize for the sake of decentralization unless there's demand. And so what's happening now is Near is getting more demand and their validator, count is increasing. And so I like that as so a bit of a decentralization maxi at the same time. This to me it's a logical path. And so, those are the main reasons.
That's really interesting. Maybe after this call, if you have some sort of recent data to show that would be interesting. How the validator count is going up and like demand, maybe transaction count or whatever is going up as well. Then we can attach that to the show notes.
Oh, totally. I'm happy to drop it.
Cool. And well, let's take it from the top. If you would kind of like explain to someone who doesn't know Near or perhaps even doesn't know much about blockchains, what Near is about, how would you explain it?
Totally. I think it's just the entry point to all of Web3. It kind of has this architecture that is designed to actually work very well with any ecosystem. Right now, a bunch of layer 2s on Ethereum are actually hosting and storing their front ends on Near, which is really cool because pretty much what we're getting at is a one-stop shop for like any app. And so with Near's flexible account model, you actually can have one Near account represents, have like an access key. So every wallet on Near is a smart contract. And so you're able to like create sort of access keys that represent wallets on other addresses, on other blockchains and sign transactions for them. And so you're able to have, one account for everything. Now, this isn't implemented today, but this is the vision that is really being fulfilled, and we're making a ton of progress towards it. But I just think it's like the best place to actually go for Web2 companies to get involved in Web3, and we actually have a lot of great partnerships and examples of that. And then two, so like if you're a consumer app looking to, Web 2, looking to get into Web 3, like give your users the option to exit into Web 3, that actually solves a problem for them. And so, yeah, I would say like Near is the entry point for pretty much Web 2 to Web 3 and then the rest of Web 3.
Right. And in terms of, you just mentioned that some Ethereum dApps are hosting the front end on Near. Could you just explain that, what that means to perhaps like viewers wondering what that exactly means?
Can
And
I
what
share my screen and show you?
Yeah, for sure. Do it.
Yeah, because I think that's like a show versus tell. It's
Yeah, that's one
here.
of those.
Yeah. So let's see. So this is what we call a gateway, and this gateway is pointing to apps on Polygon ZK EVM. And so all of the contracts are deployed on Polygon ZK EVM, but their JavaScript code, it's like JSX. It's kind of like React, is actually stored in a smart contract on Near. And what's cool about this is like if I connect my wallet, let's see, I got to change my network. This is live, by the way. Like this is like here right now.
Yeah.
And I can actually like use QuickSwap in my browser. Like in this one, like this is actually this is storing data on Polygon ZK VM. Like the contracts are deployed there. But the front end is on Near. And so what we're getting at here is like you can just use any app within one interface. And this is the sort of feature that I envision is going to actually like bring the masses, because honestly, these L1s, L2s, L3s now, it's kind of a road to nowhere. And what users really want is a good experience. So provide them that experience. Yeah.
Sorry, how is it usually different than with the front end? Just to make that bridge in terms of what it usually has been and how this is now different.
Yeah, so QuickSwap, you can just go to like quickswap.exchange here, and like QuickSwap is the one that actually is like hosting this front end, probably on AWS or Vercel or something like that, or deployed via Vercel or Netlify. But now you could actually just like take that front end code that this is a much prettier site. Like you can put a lot more like information on Netlify than you can on the blockchain, but like the core functionality can be just put into like this React component here. And the cool thing here is now, and this is like, that's for QuickSwap. You can go to Gamma, you can do all this stuff. And the cool thing is now you can have like composable components. And what I mean by this is like, if you wanted to, create your own website and just have Polygon ZK EVM's QuickSwap component, you can just take that front end code, fork it, and embed it in your site. This is huge. And the cool thing here is that all that front end code is also stored on Near. And this is sort of a controversial thing within blockchain right now, is like all these front ends are constantly getting hacked. I think Trader Joe was 2 days, like a week ago or in the last week. Curved was in the last 2 months. Balancer was in the last 2 months. And like millions and millions of dollars are being lost here. But if you actually store that JavaScript code on Near, one, you're not, you deploy it once and it's there forever, which is really cool. And then two, you're able to create these like composable components. And so if you wanted to just fork it, embed it into your site. You don't have to fork Uniswap for 100th time, fragmenting liquidity and all this other stuff. And so I think that this is the future of blockchain development. And this is only possible because Near can scale state and also put this JavaScript code on chain. And since it scales state, it's always going to be cheap to deploy.
In terms of how this is more secure, does that mean then it is secured sort of like by the economic security of Near, as in the network as well? The front end is secured by that then?
Yeah, you're going to have to actually like get all the validators, or 60% of the validators to collude to change anything. Like no longer are you just relying on AWS to like decide on whether your app gets served to the user. Now you can actually deploy it on chain, and it's decentralizing the front end, in short.
That's really interesting. And if you want to make small changes to that code, what does that look like? Is that as easy as?
Yeah, you do need to redeploy it. So everything's pretty much like versioned in this way, and actually, it's a feature, not a bug. And the reason for this is one, it literally costs like cents to deploy, which is really cool. And two, everything's versioned. And so, like, let's say you didn't like the update that Instagram pushed to Instagram, you're able as a user just to render the previous version.
Right, right.
And again, this is like, we're getting nitty gritty here, but I think that these are all the prerequisites to actually like give developers and users the optionality to choose whatever chain they want, whatever app they want, as long as their front end is stored on Near. And so what this is, what I'm showing you is an app called DapDap. It's in alpha, so bear with me on potential bugs and things. But what this is like you're able to then navigate any app that stored their front end on Arbitrum or Avalanche or Base or BSC or like Metis, Near, Optimism, list goes on. And so what I'd recommend for your users to check out is to do these like quests. I don't work for this project. This is just like an ecosystem project. But what I see this as is the best airdrop farming tool in like this is a DeFi education podcast. And so right now, I don't think DeFi is like doing that hot because interest rates are high and you're able to essentially get your 5% elsewhere. But what is exciting in DeFi land are airdrops. So what you do here is you complete these quests and then wallet, and claim these airdrops across different apps. So like, if I wanted to connect here, I'm now on Polygon CKVM, like the goal, the quest is, do a swap on Polygon on QuickSwap and then, provide liquidity via Gamma or then do lending via something else. And now you're just in one place. You don't have to hop across different sites. You don't have to do all this stuff. It's like one seamless experience. And I think that this is the future of Web3 because, changing networks sucks. Everything, like what we're building right now, like rest of crypto, my grandma won't be able to use it. My mom won't be able to use it. Like my brother, who's like, technologically, capable, probably won't be able to use it.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that answers some questions.
That's super interesting. Yeah. So on this, like the quests are integrated here on the front end in terms of are these all then modules that are on Near the JavaScript code?
Yep, all this JavaScript's on chain.
And they use this sort of plug and play approach that you mentioned. They took those modules and put them on the same site here.
Totally. And so like what you can do here, like one example I like is, let's say you wanted to like take Lido, for example, right? Now, one hard part is like verifying the components. And this is something that is honestly not been totally solved yet.
I was going to ask.
Like, yeah, that part, there's a whole ecosystem being built here, by the way. Like this is a huge endeavor. And so let's say I go to Lido, go to components, want to click, I can actually just like open Lido, and this is pointing to a contract on ETH L1. But if I wanted to, I can just, let's see, if I wanted to, I can just take this code, fork the code, and then take all this JavaScript and just embed it into my site. And this is in the near.org website. So kind of if you can kind of see where this is going, like near.org will essentially be the entry point to all of the apps. It's like a real browser-based app store. We'd love to do mobile. That's going to take some time because Apple's not so keen on it. But the idea here is like one-stop shop. Crypto's convincing. How do we, provide data availability for any chain? These are some of the exciting announcements that were kind of highlighted at NearCon. And there's a really good thread here. I'll drop it to you after, where it kind of explains like Near's like chain abstraction narrative. Like we should be able to abstract the chain away from the user's experience. And so, yeah, this essentially impacts pretty much everything that I'm getting at. Like there's a user layer. Well, historically, we've called this the blockchain operating system or BOSS. That might change the name just because it's a little, we've got some feedback on it. Then the execution layer, which is really Near, and then data availability, which could be Near, it could be Celestia, it could be anything else, and Settlement's also Near. So yeah, hopefully this gives you a little bit of an overview of kind of like where things are going.
Yeah, gotcha. We'll put that link in the show notes. So just as a user, when I'm on a front end, how can I verify this one is a secure one then, basically?
That's a great question. We not we, by the way, when I say we, I mean like the entire Near ecosystem.
Yeah.
uh,
I thought it
there's
was
a lot of
you.
people. No, no, no. Yeah, I do not take any responsibility or liability for any of this. But yeah, there are these like, what we kind of call common components or like, these featured components. And again, all of this is on chain. We don't have an amazing component sort of curation system yet. Like this has all been launched in the last like 6 to 8 months or so. And so there's still a ton of stuff being built. Really what we've seen is like a lot of like, let's see, like Mantle, there's a big like gateway for them. And so these are like verified components that somebody who's like serving you the front end. So like this, the gateway is what we call it. They get to choose what's in this. Same thing for like DAppDapp. Like they can pick which apps are displayed here. So like it's kind of up to them to do the verification. But if you wanted to like YOLO into it and just kind of figure out, test them all, like then you can just go to near.org and try out all these components. Like just for Lido, there's 27 of them.
Right.
So there's going to need to be some work done on that front. And there's a ton of money and effort being poured into safety and security. And so and this is from a team called Pagoda. So Pagoda is historically known as Near Inc. They're like kind of the R&D arm of one of the R&D arms of the Near ecosystem. And they are the ones essentially investing in like the safety and security of the blockchain operating system.
All right. Okay. Interesting. So so did I get that correctly, that this is still being worked out in terms of like there's no foolproof way for me when I'm on a front end to know if that's the one that is kind of like more secure right now, or?
So right now I would just like, the person running the gateway. So like in this example, DAppDapp is the one verifying that the components that are being displayed are the right ones.
Gotcha.
Now, but if you want to just like explore all components, we have not developed an amazing system for that yet, frankly.
Right. Well, let's dive into that in terms of security and user experience. How does Near kind of like balance that? Because sometimes it is a trade-off. When you try to make things more easy and intuitive for users, then they can be less secure. How does Near balance that, especially with features like human readable accounts?
Yes. So yeah, when we talk about user experience, the first thing that comes to my mind is onboarding. And so going back to like the first point that I said, like every wallet on Near is a smart contract, and you also have default like human readable names. So I'm like Cameron.Near. I think that this is a prerequisite to mass adoption because, all of Beyonce's fans will not be using a 0x64 character hexadecimal public key. We're going to need to have like that baked into the protocol. So first things first, like having human readable names is a huge step forward in my eyes. The second thing is once they're actually onboarded, giving them a sort of set of options of how they want to store their keys. What's cool about Near, again, if it's a smart contract, you can like rotate keys. So even let's say someone does, compromise one of your keys. Well, guess what? You can just change it. And that's really cool. And, there was like the slow pack a little while ago, like that could have been very easily sort of fixed if every wallet was a smart contract. And so, that is exciting on like the security side of things. Now, we do, everything's written in, most contracts are written in Rust, which is, definitely more secure than, a lot of Solidity programs. Near does offer developer optionality to deploy smart contracts in Solidity on this essentially giant contract on Near called Aurora. Aurora is essentially the EVM on Near. And the team rewrote the entire EVM in Rust on Near as a smart contract. And you can just take your Solidity code and deploy. And so, when it comes to developer usability, like we think that this is a good place to meet them, like meet developers where they are. And a lot of devs these days are building on ETH and Solidity. So this is like an option for them. When it comes to security, there's so many different angles of security. And so like we have offered like auditing programs in the past. There are big bug bounty programs. Security is never going to be totally robust. Like there's always going to be some sort of issues. And so our goal is to mitigate them as much as possible with audits, There's no serious like formal verification protocol on Near right now, but like there's some of that stuff being developed. There's no like there was some sort of like insurance program for a bit, but that's no longer the case. And so there was that, and then what else? Insurance, bug bounties, audits, formal verification. I think that's pretty much it. Like I don't know what else you can do
Right.
to ensure security, but we've sort of explored all of them.
Okay, okay. Before we started the call, we were talking about sort of the more recent news and events and announcements about Near. How about we dive into that a bit? Like, I mean, I've seen announcements around Near and Eigenlayer, Near and Polygon. What's new at the moment? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I mean, all of this is sort of playing into this vision of Near as an entry point, because you're going to need, these partners to, throw their front end on Near as like for the user facing stuff. You're going to need data to be available across these chains, and so big partnership with Eigenlayer to have Near support with the data availability. As the article says, it's about 4,000 times cheaper than it is on Near than it is on Ethereum. Finality is around 1 to 2 seconds, and so like you're going to be able to like achieve this information pretty quickly. So that's kind of on the. There's a nice little graphic I have here somewhere.
Yeah, can you give
like the
us a
data
bit more of
platform.
of what that and what that partnership entails? Maybe for people who are not technically inclined. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in order for you to transact properly on a network, you're going to need to be able to like read all of the data that is made available to you. It's called data
Hmm.
availability. I like this word because it's not another crypto jargon that's like confusing. It's like pretty much is what it
Yeah.
says it is.
Yeah.
And so, in order for that data to be sort of served quickly, you're going to need like the finality to be fast. And so on ETH right now, I don't exactly know how long it takes for blocks to settle, but I don't want to misquote it here because I do think it's changing as well. But you're super fast. Nearest finality is like 1 to 2 seconds. So what this means is like you're going to be able to pull information from any app, like using Eigenlayer, even on Ethereum or anything else, because that data is being stored and made available on Near,
Hmm.
which is very exciting. And so, Eigenlayer has been making a lot of headway within the Ethereum ecosystem. And really, this is just yet another sort of example of Near working together with the Ethereum ecosystem to help scale,
Hmm.
make it better for users ultimately. And so, yeah, that's kind of what a lot of this is just making sure that the data is available on
Hmm.
Near for Ethereum apps and everything else. I can't say a lot of things, but there's more to come. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, you
with
can. You
like
feel
other
free. You can tell
ecosystems.
us. It's
Yeah,
all good.
no, I would get in a lot of trouble. Yeah, so no.
Okay. And in terms of the other one, is that something similar? Is that a data availability partnership between Polygon and Near?
So
Or
the Polygon WASM prover. This is
brilliant.
exciting. So pull this up. This is right now like a lot of like zero knowledge provers are optimized for the Ethereum ecosystem, and Polygon's like CDK, the chain development kits that they've launched and are focusing a lot on. I think it's essentially like app chains on Polygon. Um,
Mhm.
they want to support WebAssembly based chains because sort of kind of not to my own horn, but I saw this very early. Like
Mhm.
the fact that like everything will eventually move to WebAssembly because it's like browser friendly and all this other stuff. Um, Arbitrum's now like is WebAssembly based. Yeah, Polkadot is I believe WebAssembly based. And so what this collaboration is to collaborate between the Near Foundation and Polygon to develop a ZK WebAssembly based prover,
Mhm.
which means it would be very fast to kind of validate transactions across different chains
Yeah.
and even do so in a privacy preserving way eventually. And so
Mhm.
if we're really trying to build for billions of people, privacy is a prerequisite. Like we
Mhm.
need it to be verifiably private. Like I tried to buy coffee the other day. There's this like project on Near that sells coffee, and you could buy it Near. It was just a horrible experience. Like trying to, I didn't want to map like the wallet that I was buying coffee with to potentially like all of my other transactions. and like I put, my friend's home address in there and the whole bit to get a copy delivered. And so I don't want my like home address associated to my wallet. And so you're going to need this privacy baked into the protocol, and also to do like multi-chain like verification to make it really fast. And so this is what the ZK Wallet Improver is ultimately looking to achieve.
Right. And these are projects that are currently like in development, so to say.
Yes, not live. This is in development. Like this is just announcing the partnership to build this stuff.
Okay. Well, in terms of, you already said like challenges. You would also like to mention some, like when we think about the roadmap, or let's say the path that Near has walked thus far. What are some of the challenges that became apparent or that are currently a topic?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back in time a little bit. In the early days, we were looking to support TypeScript as like one of the core native programming languages for contract development, and the team wasn't huge at the time, and like the ecosystem wasn't that big. So I would say that was a bit of a mistake, trying to sort of fragment the builder support communities across TypeScript and Rust, while ecosystems like Solana like tripled down on Rust and like were able to grow like a much bigger developer base that way. I'd say that was a sort of a mistake that was made. It was not like tripling down on one thing and sort of having that fragmented. The other thing is there's this huge initiative right now called the Near Digital Collective, and this is insane. Like this is a I'm a big part of it. What is this? So what we're essentially trying to do here is we're trying to build a digital government, and move a big portion. Yeah, what's up?
Is this governance related? Just wondering.
Yes, it is. It is.
Because I've noticed in other ecosystems that is an interesting dynamic topic in Polkadot and other places.
Yes, it's really hard, man. So what we're trying to do here, and I'll share the link later, but essentially create a set of DAOs to help govern the Near Foundation token treasury. And eventually move a big portion of that treasury to this network of DAOs, and like all these complex legal structures and everything in between. And so we held an election. And this was a very democratic election, which honestly I don't think went amazingly. It was anyone who had a Near wallet and a face could vote. And so you didn't need to have like any like tangible contribution ecosystem. And what this did is it sort of seeded a huge incentive to pay people to scan their face to buy votes, and then got people to essentially into 3 different houses to push certain things forward. So now we have like a kind of cartel like behavior going on in these different houses, and this is a huge initiative that I think is actually really important for the future of the ecosystem. But this is definitely something that I think may have happened a little bit too soon. I have a belief that like maybe we should prove out that these things work in a more centralized approach. I'm talking governance. Like let's really nail the Near Foundation governance and some core ecosystem contributor governance before giving it to everybody who has a face in a Near wallet. So that's a huge challenge that we're navigating today. There's about $3 million worth of Near allocated to this token treasury right now. And I'm one of the elected people to help decide on how, help make recommendations for how it gets allocated. And so that's been a real challenge. Like I've been struggling with that a lot because people have very different interests. Like we're all trying to rally around these core metrics, and a DeFi app's core metrics is very different than a move to earn app like Sweatcoin that is much more focused on lots of accounts, small balances versus like some DeFi apps that don't mind having a few whales like be putting in 40% of the entire TVL of the app, as long as TVL number goes up. And so establishing like sort of collaborative metrics together is really hard, and so coordinating around that's been difficult.
Right, right. So just unpack that a bit. Is there a decentralized treasury, or are you trying to set this up right now?
We are trying to set this up right now. There's a blog post that kind of dives into this completely, and the whole point is like there's a constitution, there's these governing bodies, there's the
Mm-hmm.
voting body, and then
Mm-hmm.
depending on how the voting body votes is how the community treasury gets allocated. And
Right.
in a perfect world, a portion of the protocol fees end up going to the treasury, and sort of help govern the future of the ecosystem.
And who can vote?
Everyone with a Near wallet who has been verified through an I Am Human app is what it's called. I Am Human, and this is like a proof of personhood because the main issue with online voting is the fact that you don't want to have a bunch of bots running elections. And so you essentially scan your face through this KYC provider called Fractal. It's not full KYC. It's just the face scan to ensure your face doesn't match up with any of the other previous faces. And
Mm.
there's actually a really sort of big evolution to this proof of humanity angle with that
Mm-hmm.
same partner, Fractal, who's built this IDOS layer. So it's essentially an identity layer on top of Near that is going to be it's going to be multi-chain as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So the perfect world, you verify yourself once and you don't need to like go through this so many times across different ecosystems and different sort of organizations within your ecosystem.
And your face is attached to a wallet then?
Your face is attached to a wallet in a private server that is stored on. By the way, I don't run any of this. This has nothing to do with me personally.
Yeah.
I'll just explain how it works. That is on a database in, I think it's Germany. So it's GDPR compliant. And so you do have the right to take your face off of that database if you want, and your wallet ID off. But yes, it is stored in a centralized server run by, I believe, Fractal.
Ah, okay, okay. Interesting. Controversial topic, I guess. Yeah. Um, and okay, so it is then also attached to a wallet. Does it matter how many tokens you have? Is it token-based voting as well, or no?
No, this is the challenge. We have a lot of people voting in a very complex system who don't understand the system itself.
Right.
And so, yeah, there was like a lot of evidence of vote buying and a bunch of crap honestly went down. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so I can send you the transparency report that sort of unpacks the how it all panned out.
Yeah, sure. Is that then like an independent body that analyzed the voting process?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And like
All
there's all
right.
these on-chain sleuths, and there was a lot of evidence of like people getting a account for the first time, and the first action that they do is to go vote. Um,
Ah, okay.
there's a whole report here that it kind of dives into everything. So this
Right,
is
right. In terms of
really
like
hard. Yeah,
you could go ahead and find some friends, just tell them kind of like scan your face. I mean, there is no financial entry barrier because you don't have to have like a certain amount of tokens or anything.
correct, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
So yeah.
governance has been giving you a headache then.
Oh yeah, man, it's tough. And the other crazy thing is like this is a very global community, and I think that's really important to highlight because I'm based in the United States, and
Yeah.
I have a sort of different experience of democracy than people that grew up in Belarus or
Right.
in Ukraine or
Yeah.
anywhere else really. And so
Yeah.
we're trying to get people, China, trying to get people who have not grown up in democracies to participate in the democratic process and even help design one. It's
Right.
actually kind of an unsolved problem that
Yeah.
is really hard because now we're trying to like solve these unsolved problems with people that we don't inherently trust, and
Yeah.
that's really difficult. It's hard to solve them with people we do trust. It's even harder if you don't trust them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's a challenge. I think coordination in a decentralized network in general and social coordination is a big challenge, especially the more global and decentralized it gets. Yeah. Right.
but I'm confident
Well,
we'll make it work. Like I'm very confident we'll make it work. It's just going to take a lot of iteration.
right. Right. Well, on a lighter note, what's been the most fun moment for you in Web3? Has there been something like, someone asking you what you do and you try and explain it and they just don't get it?
Oh, all the
Something
time.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. So fun moments in Web3. I really love building cool things with cool people is
Yeah.
honestly what it boils down to. Like these are, existential questions that we're all trying to answer together. Like what makes what makes somebody online a human
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah.
And I am confident that we will be able to solve these problems if we work well with each other. And so navigating those social dynamics has been interesting. One thing I didn't mention is I worked at the Near Foundation for about 2 years, and so I kind of saw it like start, and then I left to start the Banyan Collective to sort of focus more on like grassroots, bottom up growth. And so seeing the sort of different approach to ecosystem growth, being more top down at Near Foundation to being in the Banyan Collective, it's built more bottom up, has been really cool. Again, I work with a lot of other ecosystems through my nonprofit, and that nonprofit is called the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation.
Mhm.
We're actually just running, I have two separate teams in short. BAF, the BAF network is totally multi-chain, just teaching people about programmable money. Like I just want to get people like involved in this revolution.
That's lovely.
And then near is like the sort of more practical approach to it in my eyes, because with flexible account system, with JavaScript, smart contracts, and storing front end code on chain. Like to me, this is the fastest path towards the vision of the open web.
Yeah.
Um, and then everything that's happening in AI land is also fascinating. I'm based in the Bay Area. It
Yeah.
is crazy what's going on here. Talking about
Tell me
super
about it.
intelligence. Yo, man,
I,
it is nuts. So,
I mean,
um,
especially last, what is it, 2 days? I mean, this is going to be a movie.
oh,
OpenAI, Sam Altman being fired and all that.
I went a Netflix special just about the different Sams in the year 2020.
Yeah.
Like we have Sam Bankman-Fried, we got Sam Altman, yeah, I guess the list can go on. But
Yeah.
so Near started off as an AI company. Most people don't know
Right.
this.
No, I didn't know
And
it.
the reason why is because there's this paper. This paper essentially introduced the concept of a transformer, the T in ChatGPT, for the first time. Ilya
Okay.
Polosukin is the co-founder of Near. He's a co-author of this paper. And
Right.
so the whole reason why Near got started was to pay people to label data to train large language models.
Yeah.
The problem is that if you're paying people to label data, they need a bank account. They need some identity. They need some sort
Yeah.
of thing that associate like to get paid. Like right. And so they were like, well, crypto is a perfect use case for this. They try to build things on Ethereum. They're like, the transaction fee is higher than the payment itself. Because if you're trying to
Yeah.
give, auntie in Bangladesh or, grandma in Vietnam, the ability
Yeah.
to get paid just to label data, um, then you can really change the world. Like how Uber has unlocked, so
Yeah.
much opportunity for people that, wouldn't have opportunity within their country. Like I just came from Portugal, and I was, cost of living has gone up tremendously, and
Mhm.
the people there make ends meet by driving Uber. Like that is pretty
Yeah.
much the only thing. And so what they were trying to do originally is like give people money to label data to train large language models with accurate information.
Mhm.
Because if Google and Amazon and by the way, this all came out of Google, by the way, LA was at Google. He was a core
Yeah.
contributor of TensorFlow. He's like literally one of the godfathers of this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
he realized very quickly, well, like if super intelligence is controlled by for-profit corporate American companies, we
Yeah.
might be, putting humanity at disadvantage. So we
Yeah.
need to create a way for people to uh, own their own data, get paid to label it, and this can actually be like much more open source and accessible for everybody. And so that's when Near got started. And so the reason why I'm starting here is because like I moved to the Bay Area to kind of help bridge this gap between the AI world and the open web, because right now superintelligence is pretty much controlled by corporate America, which means that yeah, I don't know, like you're based in Germany. I'm assuming it's pretty similar over there,
Yeah.
but like for-profit, publicly listed companies have a mandate to their shareholders to maximize shareholder value.
Mhm.
What happens when the future of humanity doesn't always align with shareholder value?
Mm,
You're going to need an open approach.
mm. You just
So
had a
yeah,
thumb up pop up there, as
yeah,
if the A
yeah,
as if the AI was like what you say it confirming you or something.
yeah. He's like, let me free, let me let me go. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah,
this is why
well,
Near got started.
maybe we already had one of those moments, right? Where
Yeah,
the board thought a different direction was correct, and that's why Sam Altman had left or was told to leave. I don't know. I mean, it's been very intransparent. Another topic as well in terms of having transparency, which is a theme in Web3. This has been quite intransparent and in a way scary. I mean, people are talking about maybe they developed AGI or they made a huge leap forward there, and that's why Ilya was pulling the plug on it. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know. I truly
Yeah,
don't know. If I can speculate, I do think we are pretty close to AGI.
yeah,
The amount of innovation I'm seeing here on the ground is absolutely insane. And I would say the sort of next step to this is creating smaller models, because the big issue right now in AI world is the fact that requires so much like specialized hardware. Like these
yeah.
A100
A lot of
GPUs are
computing. Yeah,
so difficult to get your hands on,
yeah,
and so that leads to inherent centralization. And
yeah.
the real moat in AI is really just about who has these machines.
Yeah,
And so
computing
in a
is like a
perfect world,
differentiator. Yeah,
totally. In a perfect world, we're able to have small models run
mm.
locally on a device
Yeah,
where information doesn't get leaked from the device. And it's like a lot of it's either stored in secure enclaves or stored in
yeah,
MPC structure. And then you can verify that like you're using the right model via like the newest buzzword is ZKML, zero knowledge machine learning. Um,
yeah,
and the challenge here is like the Llama 2 model, which is actually like co-authored by this guy. We ran a big conference in the Bay Area, pretty much getting all of the big brain AI researchers together to talk about um, how do we run small models more on the edge of the network. So like
yeah.
edge computing. And so um, they pretty much all agreed. It was like pretty unanimous that like this is the future where it's going to go, because
Yeah,
we don't want everybody's healthcare information and text messages and everything
yeah,
seen and manipulated by super intelligence that's controlled by Microsoft
right,
or one company.
right.
And so
I
how do
mean,
we make it
corporations don't want that either. You know, they don't like to put their data with some other, maybe even competitor.
exactly? And this
Yeah,
is, but for like user protection as well. Like I see a future where people are going to have their AI model sort of like given to them at birth, and this thing's going to sort of like help them across life. Like
all right.
that needs to be done locally on your phone. That needs to be backed
Yeah,
up through like cryptographic keys that you can change. And so, I mean,
yeah,
really, what I'm getting at here is like Near is built to facilitate the open internet, and the open internet encompasses superintelligence. Because if Web 3 and the open web can't do everything that Web 2 can do, it's not going to compete. Like humans will default to Web 2 and then have all this information owned and controlled by, corporations. And so who have proven time and time again to not put the consumer first. And
yeah,
so same thing goes for like hacks. Like, everyone can get hacked. Like it's not Google gets hacked, Yahoo gets hacked, everyone gets hacked. Um,
yeah,
but how can we actually like have our own sort of like life and data passport and personal LLM run locally on a device? And
yeah.
so this is sort of a big piece to the open web and a core component to what Near is sort of designed to facilitate.
Right. Have you seen a lot of like lightweight kind of open source AI models as well? I've heard that's a thriving area as well.
Yeah, so Hugging Face is probably one of the best companies that are sort of pushing this forward.
Mhm.
And the hard part here is like the monetization piece and like incentivizing people to continue innovating around this just out of the
Right.
goodness of their heart. And so, especially when it does take, a good amount of compute just to test things, like it's
Yeah.
expensive as hell. And so, I have seen stuff, but at the same time, there needs to be a lot more money and effort like poured into this set of research. What I find very interesting is like if I were to like bucket my main interests in Web3 right now, it's like funding public goods is
Mhm.
like one of the main, like the primary thing, because again, like
Yeah.
the world's inherently broken. Like it's just the incentives that power it. And so if we can redefine the incentives to fund the public goods that need to be funded, um, we're going to be in a much happier world. And what are those public goods that are sort of best positioned to be funded right now are the ones that are digitally native.
Mhm.
Because it's hard to, the Oracle problem exists. Like someone needs to verify if, I want to give money to fix a bridge. Someone's got to, engineer needs to check that the bridge is sound.
Mhm.
With open source code, this can be done just on a computer. And so I really am excited to see how public good funding models that have helped power innovation within crypto start to be applied for open source contribution for AI.
Mhm.
So I'm really interested in that. And actually, I'm building a product with my team called Potluck. And this is essentially, it's really shit. Like our designs aren't great right now, but the contracts are there and it is functional.
Mhm.
And the whole goal here is to fund the public goods that need to be funded in your ecosystem, very similar to like Gitcoin in ETH land. So
All right.
yeah, that's one piece. Second piece is like this edge intelligence side of things. Like what role do blockchains play or the open web play in running small models on local devices. And then the third one is this whole like decentralized front end piece, like the
Right.
entry point for all the apps. Um, and so if you kind of put all these things together, like this is the open web.
Okay. That's a nice summary. Cool. And can you give us some real world some ideas of real world applications that are currently running on Near, just to make it more tangible? What are sort of like applications that you like that are perhaps driving a lot of network activity? Yeah.
Yep. So the number one most used app in all of Web3 right now is Onier, and that is called Kaching. And what this is, it's a payment app that's like an e-commerce solution, primarily targeting like Asian market.
Right.
And their payment rails like are actually just on Near, so they're using Near to actually like facilitate transactions. And
Okay.
so that app, it's a Web2 app, is growing tremendously. And then the cool thing is like they're giving their users the option to exit to Web3,
Hmm.
create an account, move their like loyalty points over to a more non-custodial approach. And this is like the biggest app in Web3 right now. You
All
can check on
right.
dappradar yourself. Yeah, it's like number one. And so that's really
Cool.
cool. And this is where I think Web3 is ultimately going to go. Is I'm not confident that all of again Beyonce's fans are going to go and create a MetaMask wallet.
Yeah.
They're going to be using an app that they like, and then they're going to have the option to exit and go into Web3, own their money, data, and
Okay.
governance.
What's the incentive to do the move to Web3 there, to like select the option then to go to Web3?
Yeah, so lower transaction costs, like first
Mhm.
things first, like you just pay less. Second thing is making a historically illiquid asset, like a loyalty point, more liquid. And so this
Yeah.
is actually a better example, like better highlighted in like the Sweatcoin approach. So Sweatcoin is was a Web2 app, and it has like dozens of millions of downloads historically. Like it was, very popular uh, just on your phone to get paid to walk. This is like a Web2 version of like Steppen.
Mhm.
And what they did is say, hey, all of our users that have been using our app for 8 years or whatever, how about you, instead of changing your sweat coin that was only exchangeable for like yoga pants or shoes, what if you
Yeah.
can create the sweat wallet and turn it into USDC and
Mhm.
make real money out of it instead of just like
Mhm.
yoga pants that you might not want. And so this idea of like turning loyalty points to dollars is super
Mhm.
compelling, and users want that. And so, yeah, this is like another sort of like real world example fourth largest app in all of crypto right now.
Oh wow,
Um,
okay. So you're number 1 and 4, perhaps like Beyonce, as you've been saying that example.
yeah, we're getting there. So yeah, I mean, these are like some real world examples. I mean, obviously, there's like all the DeFi stuff. Like on Near, we have all the it's like the primary DEX is called Ref Finance. And there's another one called like Vex. But with Ref, a lot of this is the liquidity is powered by Orderly. Are you familiar with Orderly? It's like a
No.
liquidity provisioning. Okay, so really cool project. It's powered by like Woo Network, which is a big market maker in Asia, and it's a decentralized order book protocol. So how do you actually like ensure deep liquidity on pairs across different exchanges? Again, a huge prerequisite to mass adoption, and sort of my approach to mass adoption is like you need the protocol to scale, you need easy onboarding, you need deep liquidity to actually facilitate the economy. You need strong like ownership infrastructure. I call this like NFTs in short, but like it expands beyond NFTs to real world assets and everything. Then you have like coordination tools. So you need like all the DAO infrastructure and all of the pieces like on-chain technology to coordinate. And then you need privacy. Like privacy is a prerequisite and is really just like the cherry on top that makes everything possible. And so with that liquidity infrastructure, this is Orderly. And then you can actually dive in, like use Orderly on apps like Ref, which is just a decentralized exchange with portfolio viewers and sort of all the bells and whistles of a awesome DEX. There's a lending market called Burrow. There's other like on-chain order books as well. And so we are seeing some traction there. But to be totally honest, like the Near ecosystem hasn't really prioritized whales as much as it has like a lot of users with small balances rather than one or two users that are responsible for like 80% of TVL. Because this is what the open web really is like we want normal people to use it. It's not just reserved for whales that are crypto native and hedge funds primarily.
Right, which would be an example for the loyalty points. It's more
exactly.
of a quantity, like many people game. With the loyalty points, like you said, you give access to liquidity. Then, like you make something that's rather illiquid in a closed ecosystem liquid by bringing it into Web3 and on chain. Is it then? Can you trade it in a liquidity pool then, or like how do you turn it into USD? Or whatever.
So one, you can actually do it like in the mobile app itself, which again is another huge step to mass adoption because nobody, like I have Sweat Wallet on my phone, nobody is going to carry a laptop around with them everywhere. Like the amount of smartphone, adoption around the world is like 80x more than laptops. And so it needs to be in the app. And so that is the case. You can just like transfer and like buy and actually like provide liquidity in the Ref Finance through the app. Like,
okay.
It's
so
really
it's
cool. Like
so it's a liquidity pool on Ref Finance, which is being shown in the mobile app of what was it, Kai-Ching or
Sweat? No. So this is Sweat. And like
Sweat,
they call it like you can't see it, but like they call it like a jar, like a growth jar. Like if we're trying to get into the masses, like we're not going to call it a liquidity pool. This is just not going to. It's not going to work.
Well, you could go swimming in there or something,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's possible, but users, especially retail, like they shouldn't have to learn all this new stuff in order to benefit from it.
Sweet. All right. I mean, we covered a lot of stuff. I think that's a lot to digest. Super interesting. How you're. How there's aspects where user experience is made much simpler. And it's a focus, and decentralization is still a topic that's important as well. And of course, it was interesting to hear about the challenges too in terms of governance. I think that's just the way it is at the moment. It's something super new. How do you govern a decentralized network? You have to learn as you go, I think, and try things out and see where it goes. Yeah, it's just funny to see that different ecosystems are battling on that front in their own ways. Thank
We
you
got
so
to
much,
learn from each
Cameron.
other. That's the other thing. Like, we're all trying to solve the same problems essentially.
Yeah,
How do we coordinate online with people we don't trust? The reason
yeah,
why consensus exists. So yeah, I was just came back from like Zuzalu, which is like Vitalik's and a lot of the Ethereum community's attempt to sort of coordinate around decentralized governance, and we're literally all trying to solve the same problems with like private voting, ZK
yeah,
adoption. Um, it's we got to work more together, and this is why I'm so excited about your sort of angle of being like the entry point to Web3, because now I
yeah,
can go work with Polygon, I can go work with Mantle, I can go work with Eigenlayer. Like,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
great. My job is much easier than it was when it was like, hey, rewrite all your smart contracts in Rust.
yeah.
No, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think there should be much more cross-pollination of ideas across ecosystems and learning from each other. You're right. I mean, I'm happy to facilitate that as well, perhaps in the Polkadot ecosystem, and maybe we have some cross-chain talks and chats.
I'm happy to chat whenever. I mean, like the whole goal here is like, let's make the open web happen and let's collaborate on this front. The hard part I see is around standards and like cross-chain standards.
Yeah,
We'll get there when we get there.
yeah,
But right now, it's like, hey, take your front end code, store it on Near. I don't care where your contracts are deployed. It only does support EVM right now. There are initiatives to expand the virtual machine to support other ecosystems. Um, More to come. This is all very new as well. And so, yeah, if any of your viewers are interested in sort of staying in touch, you can contact me directly on Twitter. I'm just Cameron_Dennis. I have like a little gold emoji, a gold profile picture guy. And yeah, I'm really interested, if you're interested in talking about like decentralized governance, sort of the convergence of AI and Web3. DeFi is cool, but I see it struggling right now with interest
yeah.
rates and stuff.
High
And
interest.
so, oh, and then onboarding, frictionless onboarding, like this, and
Yeah,
multi-chain accounts. Like, how do we have one account for all chains? Um,
yeah.
I'll send you a link that sort of describes what's going to happen here about that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we'll have a lot to put in the show notes this time. I think that's the episode with the
Yeah,
most links, but that's good. That's good stuff to read up on.
beautiful.
That's great. Yeah, sweet. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I put your Twitter link and everything in the bio in the show notes if anyone wants to reach out. And we'll put all the other threads and all that what you showed in there, and perhaps even links to those applications. Thanks for coming on. Let's definitely stay in touch, chat about things like governance and perhaps onboarding. I mean, that's a focus of ours, TEACHMEDEFI. And yeah, any last words?
No, I mean, just again, try to use DapDap. Actually, that would be probably, especially for Teach Me DeFi community. Like, you want to use DeFi across any chain, check out DapDap. I'll drop the link in the chat.
DapDap. Okay, good to know.
DapDap,
Will do.
yeah, alpha.dapdap.net.
Sweet. Thanks, Cameron.
Yep. Thanks for having me. See ya.
See ya.